So welcome back, Elaine, to the Zoom room for another session. Nice to have you here. So let's dive into today's email with our quotes, bit of teaching around that, and then they'll lead us nicely into the lesson. And maybe we'll have a chance to do some text as well. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so you can read that read that quote. I'll just make it a bit bigger. So you can read the headline quote.
Yeah. Healing takes place when grievances are given ample and patient space to be acknowledged, when there is transparency and honesty, when everybody is given the chance to be heard, when nobody is excluded, when people can accept the energy of the conflict and use it as a major opportunity for growth.
Yeah, so a great quote by a guy called Franco Santoro. He's a healer, founder of something called astroshamanism. You can check it out on the link if you want to know what that's about. Connected to the Fenelon Foundation in Scotland. So it gives you a powerful way to heal your grievances and the conflict in which they result by first acknowledging them. So the first principle of healing is the recognition or the acknowledgement of the problem. If you recall, lesson 79 and 80, let me recognize, lesson 79, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. So to deny the grievances exist, and before giving them ample and patient space to be acknowledged, as Franco Santoro puts it so eloquently, only sabotages the healing process, because denial before acknowledgement is called repression or suppression, and it only compounds the emotional toxicity of the grievance. So if you suppress anything, you're not actually dealing with it. It's just being pushed down, and you cover it over with some mechanism, usually some kind of distraction device to take your attention elsewhere. But you haven't actually really looked at it and released it. So David Hoffmeister, we know, is a very well-known course teacher, uses the term metaphysical ghosting, or the inappropriate use of denial, based on the metaphysical idea that everything that happens in this world is illusory, in order to gloss over and avoid fully acknowledging the negative feelings that grievances are made up of, and so keep them repressed or suppressed in the subconscious mind and out of conscious awareness. So you kind of go, well, it's all an illusion, yeah? Very easy to do. It's all an illusion. None of it means anything. But I haven't really looked at those thoughts and emotions and felt them. I've glossed over it. So they still remain there, and I'm kind of ghosting over the top of them, using the apparent truth that it's all an illusion to do that. And isn't that just so cunning of the ego? It's using the truth to defend itself. That's what metaphysical ghosting is all about. So needless to say, this is not a healing approach at all, and will not help you let go of your grievances and experience unconditional love and the peace and joy that flow from it. It's just another sneaky way your ego or belief in separation can try to sabotage any real healing of your mind in the guise of being very spiritual and achieve its objective, albeit only temporary. But this delay in your healing may last a long, long time if you keep following its guidance. So it can't ever do it permanently, but it can do it for a long, long time and keep you captive of its thought system. So another name for this ego defense that you may have heard is called spiritual bypassing. Okay? So you're very spiritual, but actually you're not really willing to look at your stuff and, you know, really do the hard work of being honest, of acknowledging it, giving it ample and patient space to come up. It's more about, well, I don't know, it's okay, I'm so spiritual that I kind of got this covered, but I haven't really actually addressed it and let it go. So the metaphysics of truly letting go or forgiving all your grievances are literally mind-blowing. Do take some time to understand, because you cannot understand with the ego mind. You actually have to blow that mind away. It made up this optical delusion of consciousness, as Einstein called it, in this profound quote. So if you want to read that from Einstein.
A human being is a part of the whole called bios universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole nature in its beauty. Albert Einstein.
Yeah, great quote. I mean, you would that sounds like it comes from a spiritual master, doesn't it, rather than a scientist. So he became much more philosophical towards the end of his life. And this was in this latter period that he started making statements like that, because he was searching for the ultimate truth, the grand unified theory, as he called it in scientific terms. It was one unifying theory that would elegantly unite, you know, all the different laws of science in one theory that, you know, could explain everything. And he never found it, and I don't think anyone ever will, because you're not going to find the grand unified theory in a projection of separation. What you're going to find is, you know, a lot of separation. If you go beyond science, beyond this world, then you can find it. But then you have to let go of the belief in this world entirely, which means all science collapses. Science is the description of how the laws of this universe and this world work. So you'd have to drop all that to get to the grand unity that Einstein was seeking, which I think he probably started to understand towards the end of his life, but maybe didn't fully do it. I don't know. I have to read more about his journey. He was clearly going there. You know, he was awakening to this, and then he said this truth, that another level of thinking is required. So that's what he's hinting at here. But then he stated this explicitly in this equally profound statement. So we can read that.
The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. Albert Einstein.
And that is a great quote. I mean, that's right in alignment with what the Course is saying, isn't it? That could be a Course quote. We can't solve the problems at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them, i.e., there's another level beyond the ego. That's what Einstein is implying here in the quote. And we have to go to that level of thinking if we're going to solve the significant problems we face. And he's talking not just about personal problems, but about problems we face as a society and as a species. We're not going to solve them at the level of thinking we're at when we created them. Now, that should be obvious, surely. But the obvious is obscured by the ego. And so, you know, this kind of insight is called wisdom in our world. Actually, it should be common sense. It's like, yeah, well, obviously. But there's a recognition here that most people in the ego won't make, that actually I am the cause of my problems. My thinking and my problems are related. My thinking is what's causing my problems. So the only way of changing my problems is by changing my thinking. As Yeshua puts it, we must raise the level of our thinking to a higher level that's above the battleground of time, space, he calls it. And he's saying that our only responsibility is to accept enone-ment for ourselves. To accept enone-ment is a different level of thinking compared with ego thinking. And that allows us to perceive everything in this world differently and experience unconditional love, deep peace, and genuine joy consistently. Because he knows that full understanding of the truth will dawn on our minds when we have this universal experience of what true reality feels like. But like any good teacher, he meets us at the level of understanding we are at when we start his course, which is almost always in a state of not fully understanding the truth and experiencing unconditional love, deep peace, and genuine joy consistently. So we're not fully there, which is why he's given us the course, as he reassuringly says in the introduction to the workbook. If you can read that quote.
Remember only this: you need not believe the ideas, you need not accept them, and you need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required.
So he's telling us, very clearly that obviously we need the course. We're not enlightened yet. Otherwise, there would be no point in giving us the course to help us train our minds. We wouldn't need it. And he's saying, just do the process. Just do the lessons. And as you go and you do the lessons, you will be learning what you need to learn. Simply practice, he's saying, just to study this course, just practice the workbook lessons by following the instructions. It's a kind of paint by numbers exercise, or connect the dots. Okay, do that. And if connecting the dots, those kids drawings that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Where you go, okay, we'll draw to there, and then it tells you, which dot to connect, and then you draw the picture. That's kind of what the course is. Okay, when you start connecting the dots and following his instructions, you don't know the whole picture. But as you start, connecting the dots, the picture starts forming, and you start getting a better picture and a clearer picture, and so it goes. And the more you follow the instructions and you connect the dots, the clearer that picture becomes. And that then allows the universal experience of truth to arise automatically in your mind. That picture is the awareness of and experience of truth, who you really are, in other words, your true self, and then how that self perceives the world. And I've also recorded meditations and breath breaks to guide you through the longer and the shorter practice periods that he recommends in the workbook lessons. So all you need to do is listen to these recordings, follow the instructions in the recordings that always ask you to notice any negative thoughts or emotions, in other words, your grievances, in your mind, and then let them go with the help of your breath, sometimes some simple visualization techniques, and applying the workbook lesson for the day. And, each breath break and meditation follows basically the same format, just using a different idea as the key kind of idea around which that whole meditation or breath break is formed. If you do this and you just practice the lessons, and you practically speaking, that means you can just listen to the recordings that I give you, the longer ones twice a day, the shorter ones as frequently as you can remember to, then it's likely that you'll start experiencing this universal experience of love, peace, and joy that Yeshua is referring to. which is the same experience as all the saints, mystics, gurus, masters, and avatars who've ever lived have experienced and described. It's nothing different. And you are as entitled to that experience as they were. So don't put them on a pedestal and make their accomplishments seemingly unattainable for a so-called mere mortal like yourself. In your perception, many people go, oh, well, you know, I'm not anything special. I'm not like the ascended masters or these great masters and teachers like Yeshua and the Buddha. You know, I'm just little old me, and like I don't really get it. And so they actually deny themselves the experience that these masters are offering. You know, as Yesh was saying here, you have exactly the same potential to understand and know the truth experientially as he did. Something that he states explicitly in this passage from section 2 of chapter 1. So if you can read that.
There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The main difference between us as yet is that I have nothing else. This leaves me in a state of true holiness, which is only a potential in you.
So although we have exactly the same potential, we haven't actualized that potential, whereas he has, which is why he's the teacher. And he's talking to us from beyond time and space because he's learned to transcend time and space. We're still in that process. But wouldn't you want someone who's actually made that journey before you to guide you?
Mm.
He's got excellent credentials. Okay. You know, I don't, in fact, I don't know of anyone with better credentials because he demonstrated the power of his true awareness of his spirit so clearly in his life through the miracles he did, you know, phenomenal healings that like he was almost indisputably the greatest healer who's ever lived, given that he actually raised the dead and he resurrected himself. As far as we know, no one else has ever done that, has come back to life. As far as we know, it could have happened, but not as publicly. You know, that was the most graphic public demonstration of the overcoming of death that has ever been made in human history. And it did fundamentally, the resurrection crucifixion drama fundamentally changed the world. So he's got excellent credentials. You're like, okay, well, you know, he's clearly did operate on another level when he was alive and is now coming to us from beyond, you know, this world to teach us how he did it and say, well, you've got all the potential that I have. You can awaken as I did, and I'm giving you a course to train your mind to do exactly that. Well, I'll sign up for that. You know, when you start to realize what you have in A Course in Miracles, it's phenomenal. You've got a detailed course in mind training from the greatest spiritual master who's ever lived, which is going to train you to become exactly like him if you just follow the fairly simple instructions step by step and you persist with it. So it's not your potential for holiness or true awareness that's the problem, because that's all holiness is, but it's only a willingness to experience the truth of who you are that is different from the spiritual masters like Yeshua. And the good news is you don't need to understand much at this stage in your spiritual growth to practice the workbook lessons daily. As he says. So you can read that.
However, understanding is not necessary at this point. In fact, the recognition that you do not understand is a prerequisite for undoing your false ideas. These exercises are concerned with practice, not with understanding. You do not need to practice what you already understand. It would indeed be circular to aim at understanding and assume that you have it already.
Yeah. So I think he's, you know, stating the case very, very clearly. And so he's saying, well, anyone who just has a willingness can do this. You don't have to be enlightened and understand fully to undertake this course. In fact, that would be circular. Enlightened beings of this world don't need the course. Though they might read and go, yeah, absolutely, I get it. But they don't actually need it because they're already there. You don't need to practice what you already understand, as he says. So he's meeting us where we are. We don't understand fully, but he's meeting us in that state of not fully understanding. And the practice is designed to increase our understanding and ultimately help us come to the full understanding of who we are and what the truth is. And so, practice makes perfect. You practice and you practice the lessons and you read the text to increase your understanding, which is to become aware. That understanding is simply to become aware that God, or pure formless awareness of perfect love, as we call it, is your true awareness. It's that simple. That awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, is your true awareness. It's really your only awareness. And then it's to stay rooted in that awareness for most of your remaining time on earth. That's what it means to live in an enlightened state. You stay in that awareness. And that awareness is guiding your thoughts, words, and actions in this world. So you can still interact in the world, but the underlying foundation, the awareness behind that interaction is different. You substituted pure formless awareness of perfect love for the ego's false awareness, and that becomes then your only guidance. And that's what it means to live in an awakened or enlightened state. So that brings us to today's live session, which you're in, and that leads us nicely in nice preparation for today's lesson. So let's jump into that. So this one is another review lesson, 85, reviewing lesson 69 and 70, the original lessons. So skip the introduction. So if you can read those two key ideas and then go into the more detailed form of them. In fact, let's just go into number one, save some time. So my grievances hide the light of the world in me. You can read that in the original and then the alternative sentence by sentence.
My grievances hide the light of the world in me. My grievances hide the true awareness of the world in me. My grievances show me what is not there and hide from me what I would see. My grievances show me what is not there and hide from me what I want to perceive. Recognize this. What do I want my grievances for? Recognizing this, what do I want my grievances for? They keep me in darkness and hide the light. They keep me in limited awareness and hide my true awareness. Grievances and light cannot go together, but light and vision must be joined for me to see. Grievances and true awareness cannot go together, but true awareness and vision must be joined for me to perceive truly. To see, I must lay grievances aside. To perceive truly, I must let my grievances go. I want to see, and this will be the means by which I will succeed. I want to perceive truly, and this will be the means by which I will succeed. From the top?
Yep.
My grievances hide the true awareness of the world in me. My grievances show me what is not there and hide from me what I want to perceive.
Elaine, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Carry on.
Number 5. Grievances and true awareness cannot go together, but true awareness and vision must be joined for me to perceive truly. To perceive truly, I must let my grievances go. I want to perceive truly, and this will be the means by which I will succeed. It's interesting, really, because There's something that I have a grievance over at the moment, and I'm having to, every time it comes up, I have to let it go, but it keeps popping up.
Mm.
So sometimes it's, sticky.
Mm.
Can't just always let it go in one fell swoop. It does
Mm.
take a bit by bit.
Mm.
If
Yeah,
you do it
sometimes.
radically, you
Mm.
can do in the compromise forgiveness, but it's when it's the radical. It's not so easy, but you work on it.
Yeah. So when you deny the grievance, what you're really saying is that that it never happened. Radical forgiveness says nothing ever happened. So there's really nothing to forgive. So in that, you're denying your identity, you're denying the other person's identity, you're denying the world, you're denying time and space, you're denying all of it, aren't you? It's massive.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And grievance is where the rubber meets the road in this practice. Because, you can say, oh, yeah, well, I kind of get it. Everything's an illusion, and that's fine. Hey, da, like I kind of get this course. But then something happens, or something has happened, and you feel the grievance. You go,
Yes.
well, I don't really get this course because I'm making that very real in my perception.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
that then is affecting my thoughts, my emotions. So that now becomes my limited reality, my limited awareness. The grievance is seemingly causing that. Now I'm stuck in this dark, limited awareness, and I'm not experiencing my true awareness, which is the whole point of the ego, is to do that. So the grievances are really, where it needs to be done at that level. So all very well metaphysically, and yeah, I kind of get it. It's all an illusion, great, la-di-da, and we can say that intellectually. But you really, the test of whether you really get it is, can you let go of your grievances?
Yeah. Some you can, and some not so easy.
Yeah. And those ones that you can't, what it means is that you're more attached to your personal identification, your separate self in that area. Maybe it's a
Yes.
special relationship.
Yes.
And that's usually the key one, because the special relationship makes you as a special person real. It defines you,
Yeah.
especially if they're long-standing. Oh, I've had a special relationship for 30 years, and this is very much part of my story. It's a big part of my story, my identity, therefore my self-concept. And now this other person has done something that I don't like, and I'm in terms of that self-concept and the story, I'm justified in my grievance. Yeah. So the grievance makes the whole story of you, of the separate self and the self-concept real in your mind. And that's why it's so sticky. Because if you really let go and you don't hold the grievance, then you're also saying, well, I'm not real. This whole self-concept that I've identified, you're directly denying it by denying the grievance. Do you see that? You're undoing that separate self. And that's why it's difficult. Because you're not really forgiving the other person or people. You're actually letting go of your own self-concept, i.e. your own identity, what you think of as you, by letting go of the grievance. That's what you're doing. That's a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
I'd like to.
Hmm?
I'd like to get rid of the grievance. It's not to do with my husband. It's an outside family member, but I'm still grieved a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to let go, but it keeps popping up, keeps now and again raising its ugly head. So
And if you're aware of it and you can see it in its true light, okay, the grievance is really symptomatic of my desire to still be a separate self.
yeah.
That's actually what it's about.
Yeah.
it can help you to let it go. Okay, do I really want to be that little separate self who's a victim and is always complaining and fearful and thinking these little attack thoughts? Do I really want to be that in this
No.
instance? Yeah,
No.
well then, the decision's obvious. Okay, well, I've got to drop those thoughts and emotions towards that person. Otherwise, I am being that. And I'm limiting myself to that very, limited little self. And, if I'm honest, yeah, a lot of honesty is required. I'll never be happy in that self. It's
No.
never going to
No.
bring me happiness. I'll never find
Never
peace.
have.
I'll never
Yeah.
find happiness. So it's a miserable reality I'm condemning myself to through my grievance. So my grievance is condemning me to hell, which is what Yeshua is telling us. But it's to see that very directly in your own experience. Okay, right now, if I'm holding the grievance, I'm in a hellish state. What does hell mean? A helpless, innovative little life. I feel limited. I feel contracted. I'm certainly not connected with my source. I don't feel happy and loving and joyful and expansive. I feel very limited, contracted. It's not a nice state to be in. And then, you see that the grievance is intimately part of that negative state, which negates love, peace, and joy. And you go, well, why would I want to hold on to my grievances when that's what the grievance does? So you've got to see the grievance very, very honestly. And that's what he helps us do with these lessons. And that's why he repeats, and it's the same lesson. There's a number of lessons on grievances in this particular part of the workbook. It's about 3 or 4 different lessons on really addressing the grievances, because he knows it's a major part of your ego's thought system. And that defines you. Some people are defined by their grievances completely. They hold that grievance till the day they die. I'll give you an example. On a collective level, I once sent out a quote about the quote was, well, if you can't forgive Hitler, then you can't forgive it all. And one of the Jewish guys at my squash club came up to me that night.
Maybe
He
telling me,
said,
yeah.
he says, yeah, don't normally I like your stuff, but don't send me that stuff. And I said, okay, so what was were you offended? He said, and I try to say to him, but do you understand what I'm saying? If you're really going to forgive, you've got to forgive the worst of what human beings can do. And Hitler and the Nazis symbolized that worst. So if you can't do that, then you still have a grievance. The grievance is justified, and the ego is still in business. But the identification that he had as a Jew and a Jewish person prevented him from doing it. So you see, the self-concept then attached to now a group prevents the forgiveness from happening. If he hadn't been attached to his identity as Jewish, he probably would have been able to accept that maybe. Say, okay, I get it from a spiritual point of view. I understand what's being said here, and I can accept that, and I can actually apply it. But the self-concept is too identified with that particular form, because it's a form of, this is who I am. I'm a Jew, and I'm not. Therefore, the conditioning and the programming prevented the forgiveness happening. And you see how that plays itself out now still in the world. Look at the conflicts in Israel and the Middle East. No, it's the same. It's the identification with the collective, the group. Oh, I'm a Jew, I'm an Arab. And then because of those labels in people's minds, and they believe that, you then have, a conflict on a collective level. But if they all said, well, hang on, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not a Jew or an Arab at all. Maybe I am the Son of God, the extension of perfect love, as is everyone else. And we're all the same. So why are we fighting if we're all the same? I'm really just fighting myself. Conflict wouldn't be possible if you understood this fully. But, you know, as a species, we don't. Most people very identified with the, you know, the ego's definitions of them, classification. Oh, you're this, you're that, and they believe it. And then they behave accordingly. So our job, as Einstein said, is to free ourselves from this prison. Let's go back to this great quote, really, that we looked at earlier. What's he saying there? This delusion that, you know, we are somehow separate, part limited in time and space, experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest. What separates us? Our identity. We think we're Jewish or Islamic or Arabic or black or white or gay or heterosexual or whatever. You know, whatever the classification is, it doesn't really matter. It means that we separate from everyone else in our minds. And Einstein is telling us very clearly, this is an optical delusion of consciousness. And it's a prison that restricts us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us, or our chosen tribe. You know, if it's an identity that's related to a grouping of human beings, whether that's cultural, religious, ethnic, gender-based, sexual-based, whatever the form of that is, it actually serves the same purpose in the ego's terms, doesn't it? It separates us from everyone else and restricts us to our personal desires and our grievances. And he's saying our task must be to free ourselves from this prison. It's a self-created prison. By widening our circle of compassion, grateful on all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty, to recognize that we are really one and the same awareness or life essence, and deconstruct, therefore, all the reasons for grievances just disappear in this higher awareness, in true awareness of the world. Okay, so you want to read the specific applications for this idea?
Yeah, let me not use this as a block to sight. The light of the world will shine all this away. I have no need for this. I want to see. The same, or in the alternative.
Yep.
Let me not use this as a block to true perception. My true awareness of the world will shine all this away. I have no need for this. I want to perceive truly.
So these are just statements of affirmations, really, saying I'm determined. I'm determined to get this. I don't want the ego. I have no need for this. I want to perceive truly. I'm not going to allow these blocks to affect my perception. I'm going to allow this true awareness to come into my mind. And face these grievances, which, as you say, can be very sticky. It's almost the most difficult part of this whole process to let go of your grievances, because they make the ego real. They make you real. They make your life real. And you see how they limit you into a very limited awareness of yourself. No grievances means no self. No grievances equals no separate self. That's the equation. So if you drop all grievances, then there's no longer a separate self concept in your mind. As long as you have one grievance, you're still identified with a separate self. This is why Yesha says, well, this has to be completely done or not at all. If you hold one grievance, then you're still in the ego. And that will continue to then dictate your thoughts and your emotions, and will keep you away from pure formless awareness of perfect love. Because one grievance thought completely denies pure formless awareness of perfect love. You see how it works? Oh, well, I've covered 99% of them, but I've still got this one grievance. It's remaining. Well, you hold that grievance, it denies this awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, because now you're in the awareness of the separate self, and it's negative awareness, and love is denied. Pure formless awareness of perfect love is denied. So it has to be an all or nothing. It's like, okay, so I've got to do this entirely. Every grievance is to go. I can't hold on to one grievance, even if it's seemingly like in the example I gave you, in that guy's mind, that was an impossible grievance to let go of, because it's so deep rooted in his psyche, goes back, to his core conditioning as a Jewish person from birth. Yeah, very, very difficult. But if he had, that would free him. Huge freedom comes from it. It's like, okay, I'm no longer identified as this person. So my ability to empathize and have compassion and truly unconditionally love now comes to the fore. But as long as I identify as the separate self, I can't do that. And the grievances keep that separate self intact. Okay, so great lesson. Any other thoughts on that? Just keeping, where as the grievances show up, that this awareness is what you're choosing. Okay, so then on to number 2, which is my salvation comes from me. If you can read that in the original and alternative, sentence by sentence, please. Elaine, are you there?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if you
My
can read.
salvation, yeah. My salvation comes from me. My freedom comes from me. Today I will recognize where my salvation is. Today I will recognize where my freedom is. It is in me because its source is there. It is in me because its source is there. It has not left its source, and so I cannot have left my mind. It has not left its source, and so it cannot have left my awareness. I will not look for it outside myself. I will not look for it outside myself. It is not found outside and then brought in. It is not found outside and then brought in. But from within it will reach beyond, and everything I see will but reflect the light that shines in me and itself. But from within me, it will reach beyond, and everything I perceive will only reflect the true awareness that shines in me and itself. And from the top, my freedom comes from me. Today, I will recognize where my freedom is. It is in me because its source is there. It has not left its source, and so it cannot have left my awareness. I will not look for it outside myself. It is not found outside and then brought in, but from within me it will reach beyond, and everything I perceive will only reflect the true awareness that shines in me and itself.
Okay, thoughts on that?
Was just saying that our freedom comes from within, and we will see the true awareness that shines in from the source, from me and itself. I mean, it's always there, constant.
Yeah.
We need to look within. That's what it's saying.
Yeah.
It's not found
within.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah. Which we're prone to looking outside.
We are.
It's in this form, whatever that may be, in this relationship, in this substance, in this
a holiday,
whatever the circumstance, event, yeah, possessions, experiences, that's the ego's condition. Look outside yourself for happiness and attach to that. And of course, all of those things are transient, they're temporary. They can't satisfy you permanently because they are impermanent. It should be perfectly obvious, but it's not. Again, this is higher. We call this higher awareness. We call this wisdom, but actually it should be perfectly obvious because nothing in this world lasts. So how can you rely on any of it? How can you attach to any of it when it doesn't last? That's a very silly thing to do as your source of happiness. What he's pointing us to here is that we can go within and we can find our inner freedom, which never changes. This is the unchanging, unchangeable self. It's not affected by any of these appearances. And that's the only real source that we can find happiness. Because that's the only thing that doesn't change. It's not really a thing, but it's only awareness that doesn't change. So they're saying go within, find it there, and look nowhere else. Don't vacillate. Look nowhere else because it is nowhere else. That's where you'll find it. You won't find it in the forms of the world. Okay, and then just read the ideas, forms of the idea for more specific applications.
These forms of the idea are suitable for more specific applications. Yes, same. Let this not tempt me to look away from me for my salvation. Let this not tempt me to look away from me for my freedom. I will not let this interfere with my awareness of the source of my salvation. I will not let this interfere with my awareness of the source of my freedom. This has no power to remove salvation from me. This has no power to stop me from awakening. And from the top, these forms of the idea are suitable for more specific applications. Let this not tempt me to look away from me for my freedom. I will not let this interfere with my awareness of the source of my freedom. This has no power to stop me from awakening.
Yeah, again, statements of intent. These are affirmations, really. What is he doing here? This is stating our affirmation, affirming our commitment to the truth through these stating these lessons and then stating it in different ways. So it becomes very, very clear to us. It's asking us to face the grievances, whatever else tempts us to look outside of ourselves for freedom and to go within. And this sort of addresses the desire aspect, doesn't it? You see how he goes, okay, so this is about grievances, the first one. And then on the flip side is desire. Okay, so I'm desiring things in the world that I think are going to bring me freedom. You need to let go of both the grievances and the desires or expectations because they relate it. As he says, I think in lesson 73, that grievances, idle wishes or desires, and grievances, which is what you feel when your desire is not met, when your expectation is not met. So idle wishes and grievances are co-makers, partners or co-makers in the world you picture, and they make up this world. So we need to address both of them. If you drop the expectations, then you won't have grievances. But equally, if you drop the grievances, then you're also dropping the expectations. See, because the expectations and the grievances are two sides of the same illusory coin. So you drop one, and you must also let go of the other, whichever angle you approach it from. If you've got a big expectation and the grievance hasn't come yet, know that I've got to drop the expectation, otherwise the grievance will come. I'm setting myself up for a grievance. If I'm already done that and I have the grievance, then I've got to let go of the grievance, which will also help me let go of that initial expectation that is now feeding the grievance. And so whichever way you approach it, from the perspective of letting go of your desires or perspective of letting go of your grievances, it comes to the same thing. You have to drop both sides of the illusory coin of the ego to find your freedom, which is what he's saying in this lesson. Okay, so any other thoughts on this? My freedom comes from me, my salvation comes from me, and my grievances hide the true awareness of the world in me. My grievances hide the light of the world in me. Okay, so any questions on that, Elaine? Otherwise, shall we go into the text? There's 4 paragraphs. Probably do it in half an hour, and then we'll just do a very short med.
Yeah, because I have got things to do, so we'll have to, make it definitely no more than half an hour, because I've got lots of little bits of jobs to do.
Yeah. Okay, it's fine. So maybe we could even skip the med. Let's see a bit of text. There's only 4 paragraphs, so should we just dive?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another section of the text, section 7 of chapter 11, called the condition of reality. Just 4 paragraphs. So if you can read that, Elaine, in the original and the alternative, but to translate there.
I can't see that yet. Yeah. The world as you perceive it cannot have been created by the Father, for the world is not as you see it. The world as I perceive it cannot have been created by the Source, for the world is not as I perceive it. God created only the eternal, and everything you see is perishable. Your formless awareness of perfect love extended only the eternal, and everything I perceive is perishable. Therefore, there must be another world that you do not see. Therefore, there must be another world that I do not perceive. The Bible speaks of a new heaven and a new earth, yet this cannot be literally true, for the eternal are not recreated. The Bible speaks of a new heaven and a new earth, yet this cannot be literally true, for the eternal are not recreated. To perceive anew is merely to perceive again, implying that before or the interval between you are not perceiving at all. To perceive anew is merely to perceive again from a fresh perspective, implying that before or in the interval between I was not perceiving at all. What then is the world that awaits your perception when you see it? What then is the world that awaits my perception when I perceive it truly? And from the top, the world as I perceive it cannot have been created by my source, for the world is not as I perceive it. Pure formless awareness of perfect love extends only the eternal, and everything I perceive is perishable. Therefore, there must be another world that I do not perceive. The Bible speaks of a new heaven and a new earth, yet this cannot be literally true, for the eternal cannot be recreated. To perceive anew is merely to perceive again from a fresh perspective, implying that before, or in the interval in between, I was not perceiving at all. What then is the world that awaits my perception when I perceive it truly?
Okay, so what's he saying there?
It's saying the world that we perceive cannot be created by the source, for the world is not as I perceive it. So it's just saying, taking another perspective, and the Bible is saying a new earth and a new heaven. And it can't be true because eternity cannot be recreated. It is what it is. It's eternity. So to
Which
perceive
is
it
why
as
we
the new,
actually changed the word creation. So we translate it as being, either extension or being. Because you can't create implies that something didn't exist and then you bring it into existence, doesn't it? In most people's mind, oh, I created it didn't exist and now, but actually, we've always existed. If we're eternal, it means we've always existed. So there's no creation or recreation. It's simply coming to the realization that we always have been. That this awareness that we are is always there, always has been there, always will be there. It's eternal. And that's what realizing your creation means. You're realizing your fundamental being, the ground of being, some philosophers would call it, that is eternal, that can never change. So he's just saying, well, here we are then. This is what we're doing with this section. What is the world then? Yeah, it leads into the rest of it. What is the world that awaits my perception when I actually perceive it truly from this eternal perspective? Which leads us nicely into the next paragraph. So if you can read
every
that.
loving. Do I just go into the alternative, or is there much to translate?
The Son of God will become an extension of perfect love, and the Father will become the source. Other than that, no. So if you want to do an alternative.
Every loving thought that the extension of perfect love ever had is eternal. The loving thoughts its awareness perceives in this world are the world's only reality. They are still perceptions because the extension extended as people and apparently other sentient beings still believe that it is separate, yet they are eternal because they are loving. And being loving, they are like their source and therefore cannot die. The real world can actually be perceived. All that is necessary is a willingness to perceive nothing else. Or I perceive both good and evil. I am accepting both the false and the true and making no distinction between them. So just saying any loving thought that we have is from perfect love, and that is eternal. And that's actually the real reality.
Yeah, that's the world's only reality. So this is what he calls the real world. It's the world correctly perceived. So the real part of the real world is the loving thoughts that we perceive. So if you perceive with love and you experience its effects, which can look like peace and joy, then you're in the real world. Otherwise, it's all false. So these loving thoughts connect us with true reality, with our true self. But we must be willing. It says the condition for this is a willingness to perceive nothing else. We can't perceive the real world and reality if we perceive something else. We perceive both good and evil. So, okay, well, there's love and there's peace and joy, and that's good. And then we perceive evil, which is dark and that's fear and guilt and sin and attack. Then I'm accepting both the false and the true and making no distinction between them. So we have to see that any evil is simply not real. It's going to come into our awareness, but then we deny it and we let it go. And that's the willingness to perceive nothing else. It's not saying you won't be tempted, and initially you might perceive evil, but then you let it go. You say, but actually it's not real. Which means that you're denying the one and accepting the other. You're denying the false and you're accepting the true. If you try and accept both good and evil, then you're trying to make the false true, and you get confused about what reality really is. That's what he's saying. So there must be a non-dual willingness, a willingness to perceive truth beyond the apparent illusions of good and evil, which is just this pure awareness that we could call good. But the problem with good is a very dualistic term. What do you think of when you think of good? Evil. It's very dualistic, isn't it?
Mm.
Pure formless awareness of perfect love is not so dualistic. It's like, okay, well, it just is a word that points directly to that state of awareness, which is completely pure and has no opposite. So try and avoid the dualistic terms and dualistic thinking is what he's really saying, and that's how we come to know ourselves, our true selves and true reality. Okay, happy to move on to number 3.
Mm-hmm. Is that both, or is there much translation?
Well, the ego will become belief in separation, Father as the source, heaven will become a state of pure formless awareness. We can go in the alternative.
Yeah, the belief in separation may perceive some good, but never only good. That is why its perceptions are so variable. It does not reject goodness entirely, for that I could not accept, but it always adds something that is not real to the real, so confusing illusion and reality. For perceptions can not be partly true. If I perceive in truth an illusion, I cannot tell which is true.
Yeah, if I believe,
sorry,
perceive it, I believe in truth and illusion.
If I believe in truth and illusion, I cannot tell which is true. To establish my personal autonomy, I try to create unlike my source, believing that what I made is capable of being unlike it. Yet everything true is like it. Perceiving only the real world will lead me to the real state of pure formless awareness, because it will make me capable of understanding it. Well,
what's that one?
Well, the belief in separation can see good, but never only good. This is why the perception is so variable. It doesn't actually reject goodness entirely. It likes to add something to it that's not real, which is confusing the illusion of reality. It can't be just partly true. It believes in truth and illusion, and so therefore can't tell which is true.
Very confused, and that's what we've done in this world. You know, it's a compromised approach in both truth and illusion, and good and evil, light and dark. And so the world is a very mixed bag as a result, isn't it? Very like, well, there's all these, we were talking earlier about the Eurovision, you know, all these different influences seem to be real. They seem to juxtapose. You have, you know, one of those songs was really dark, satanic, and the other one is really light and love. Well, which is true? You know, they both seem to be reality, unless you correct your perception, and you know, you must deny one in order to accept the other. You can't accept both as equally real and valid. Otherwise, you'll just be confused. So just a restatement of the same non-dual teaching that runs through this whole course, that you must choose one or the other. You cannot have both. You cannot compromise, in other words. And that's really what sets apart the course from many other teachings. Certainly any dualistic teaching tries to compromise and tries to make both the darkness and the light, or good and evil, real. And the course says, no, you can't do that. You must make a clear-cut choice between them. And you know, that's the primary distinction between a dualistic teaching, and many spiritual teachers and teachings are dualistic, and a non-dual teaching, which just holds to a very rigorous position. It says, you know, only the light, only love is true and real, and everything else is not. That means that the entire world and universe of form cannot be real. You know, the implications of this are massive. This is why people resist it. He's saying the only way out of this conundrum is to make a clear-cut choice. Otherwise, you'll just continue to be confused. And if you're confused, then you come here. You incarnate as a human being, and you come back into a world, and you again try and find some kind of happiness in this confused state. And you're just saying, give it up. You'll never find it. How can you find happiness when you come into a world where there's so much apparent unhappiness? And you have to, deny all of this just to be happy. Why would you choose to do that? Why not just stay in the happy state, which is beyond this world? Okay. Happy with that?
Yeah.
So number 4, last paragraph, again, just reading the alternative.
Yeah. The perception of goodness is not knowledge, but the denial of the opposite of goodness enables me to recognize a condition in which opposites do not exist, and this is the condition of knowledge. Without this awareness, I have not met its conditions, and until I do, I will not know it's mine already. I have made many ideas that I have placed between myself and my source, and these beliefs are the world as I perceive it. Truth is not absent here, but it is obscure. I do not know the difference between what I have made and what pure formless awareness of perfect love extends, and so I do not know the difference between what I have made and what I extend. To believe that I can perceive the real world is to believe that I can know myself. I can know pure formless awareness of perfect love because I am this awareness. The real world is all that the remembrance of perfect love has kept for me out of what I have made, and to perceive only this is awakening, because it is the recognition that reality is only what is true.
Okay. What's on that? What's he saying?
I can't. Could you bring it down a second? I can't see it. Just trying to. Well, it's just talking about the opposites of goodness, but it's saying that it doesn't. The condition in which opposites do not exist, and this is the condition of knowledge. So, without this awareness, we've made many ideas and placed between the true self and the self and the source, and these beliefs of the world as I perceive it. Truth is not absent here, but it is obscured. So we don't know the difference of what we have made and what pure formless and perfect love extends. But we don't know the difference between what we've made and what we've extended. Yeah, so there's a lot of confusion.
What's he really saying here? As I perceive the world, so I come to know myself. You know, my perception of the world and my self concept are intimately related. If I can perceive only love in this world and I let go of everything else, then I come to know myself. If I perceive good and evil, light and dark, then I can't know myself. Then I'm
right. Yeah, you've put it a lot better. Yes, yes.
About myself.
Which
is why the perception. That's why this is the course is training us in how to perceive the world, how to perceive correctly the world, which is the real world, because he knows that when we do that, then we come to know ourselves. It's the only way we do come to know ourselves.
Yeah.
The perception then reinforces this true self concept, the Christ or the Son of God or the true self. And we come to know that more and we identify more with that, which then helps us to perceive correctly again, more and more. So that's why the focus of this course, where the rubber meets the road, is in correcting perception, changing our perception of the world, because that changes our mind about who we are. And so we come to know ourselves. And so then he concludes saying the real world is all that the remembrance of perfect love is kept for me out of what I have made, right? This corrected perception, the real world of this illusion, is all that the remembrance of perfect love helps you perceive, because this perception is your awakening to yourself. To perceive only this is awakening to your true self and true reality, because there's a recognition that only what is true is reality.
So through duality, you're not going to find your true self.
No, you will never find your true self in duality, because you're split by definition. There's a split mind. You say both ideas of yourself, both self-concepts can then be true, but they contradict each other fundamentally. So how then can you know yourself if you've got two completely opposing self-concepts going on in your mind and you vacillate between their perceptions continuously? You can't ever know yourself. The condition of reality is the willingness to let go of the false and perceive only the true, accept only the truth as true in your perceptions. Okay, so just summarize it, just a short summary and then the key message.
The world as it appears to me cannot have originated from the source, because what I perceive is perishable and temporary, not eternal. Therefore, there must be another reality that I am not currently perceiving. The eternal truth cannot be recreated, as it is eternal, which caused me to perceive the world from a fresh perspective to truly understanding it.
Yeah, so what's he saying there? Just there's another world, there's another true reality that's eternal. And if I don't fully get it, then what this is calling me to do is to perceive the world differently. The real world, in other words. To start understanding this reality beyond this world, I must start by perceiving this world differently, which makes sense, doesn't it? So, okay, well, I've got to start somewhere. I may not know that ultimate reality because I've denied it, but I can start by perceiving this world differently, which is the true perception. That's the miracle. That's correct perception and the real world. True perception that the world perceived correctly is the real world. Okay, next one, every loving thought.
Every loving thought of the extension of perfect love remains eternal, representing the only true reality within this world. However, these perceptions are tainted by a lingering belief in separation, which obscures the eternal nature of love with transient falsities. To perceive the real world truly, I must be willing to overlook the apparent dualities of good and evil and focus solely on what is eternal.
Okay. Is that clear? What's he saying there in your own words?
Well, our perceptions are tainted by a belief in separation, which is obscuring the eternal nature and love with these transient falsities. So to see the world truly, we must be willing to overlook these dualities of good and evil and focus solely on the eternal.
Yeah. So even the shadow of good, he says at some point in the course, the good is just a shadow that covers over the eternal, which is not good or evil, it just is. So he's asking us to go beyond the dualistic perceptions and go to this unlimited awareness that simply is, and in which there's no opposite. Okay, next one from my previous attempts.
My previous attempts to assert my own personal autonomy have led me to create in contrast to my source, embedding beliefs that confuse illusion from truth. Acknowledging this, I realize that to perceive and understand the real world, which is my path to the state of pure formless awareness, I must distinguish between the unreal and I have made and the unreal that I have made and the eternal truth that I extend. In recognizing the reality consists only of truth, I awaken to my true nature as pure formless awareness of perfect love, guided by the remembrance of perfect love. This recognition of true reality is my awakening.
Okay.
Well, it's just saying our normal or previous attempts to assert this our own personal autonomy is led to create in contrast to the source, so causing confusion and illusion with truth. So once we acknowledge this, we realize that to perceive and understand the real world, which is our path to the state of pure formless awareness, so we must distinguish between the unreal that we've made and the eternal truth. And so when we recognize the reality, it only consists of truth. And this is when we awaken to once we recognize our true reality, this is our awakening. So it's guided by the Holy Spirit or remembrance of perfect love.
Yeah, to acknowledge only the true reality, and then that's awakening to our true self. You see, so it's completely connected. How you perceive the external world and your self-concept are absolutely bound up. Which is why he's saying, well, let's start with changing your mind about the world. Let's start by changing your perception, because that's going to lead to awakening to your true self. And you can't divorce those. You can't say, oh, well, I can perceive dualistically and I can perceive truth, and both truth and illusion is true, and then my self-concept's unaffected. No, your self-concept's absolutely affected by it. You're then identifying yourself as two different things. You have a split mind, in other words, a split identity. You're not clear on who you are. So compromise always means that you're confused about who you are. And this whole teaching is about clarifying that confusion, saying, well, the only way out of that confusion is choice. You've got to make a clear-cut choice, and you choose every time you perceive. You're choosing who you are every time you perceive anyone or anything in this world. You see how clearly that connection is. So you choose a grievance, you're choosing to be a separate self. You choose to let go and experience love, peace, and joy. You're choosing to be your true self.
Yeah.
And obviously the sum total of your choices then determines what state of mind you're going to be in. Are you going to be a false self or the true self? That depends on your choices moment by moment. If you keep choosing wrongly, then you're identifying with the false self, and then that becomes your reality. You live in hell, in other words. When you choose correctly, then more and more you identify with the true self, and you come to know yourself in and through your perception of the real world, which is the world perceived from that self that is non-dualistic. Okay, and then just the key message to wrap it all up. Nice encapsulation of it, which I actually wrote myself there. I didn't do this, so I can't.
Yeah. I must deny the opposite of goodness, which is the belief in separation in all its forms, to attain knowledge. I will attain this knowledge through my perception of the real world, which is all that the remembrance of perfect love shows me, out of the illusion of reality that I have made. To perceive only this real world with its help will awaken me from my limited perceptions of the false world to true reality that is beyond this world. So it's just saying that we need to deny the opposite of goodness, which is coming from our separation, belief in separation in all its forms.
Yeah.
So the remembrance of perfect love will show us out of the illusion of reality. So that's how we'll awaken from this limited false world to the true. Yeah.
You see the methodology. He's saying to us very clearly, the perception of this world is critical, because that is going to determine your self-concept. So you must perceive correctly in order to identify with the true self, with who you really are. Otherwise, you're in a false self. And the more you perceive falsely, the more that self grows and then usurps your true self, and then you wonder why you're not happy. Well, how can you be happy in a false self? You never will be. So you start to see then the connection between your perception and your self-concept, which is why forgiveness is the only way out. You must forgive or let go of your misperceptions of this world in order to start identifying with yourself, your true self, rather than your false self. Very, very simple idea, isn't it? But it needs to be repeated over and over. So you recognize that every perception that you have is a choice. You're identifying with your true self or your false self all the time. And your perception says, this is what I'm going to choose. In this moment, I choose to be my true self, or I choose to be my false self. Yeah. Those are the choices.
Yeah, I mean, most people live in duality, so they just think that you were being a Pollyanna, wouldn't they? But I guess, I understand what this is saying. Yeah, you have a choice. It's as simple as that. So
every moment, every perception, the vigilance. Every time I perceive anyone or anything, which is kind of continuously, whenever I'm interacting in the world, I'm perceiving. So continuously, I must make the right-minded choice,
regardless of what the separate
I
self.
deny my false self and accept my true self, and that's the way home to true reality and my true self beyond this world.
See, whereas that sounds outrageous to the separate self, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, the separate self's like, oh, no, it can't be that. No, that's way too radical, too difficult, too extreme, because it wants a compromise. Like, no. It's okay. You can still perceive the darkness, which means that I'm still in business, and it'll justify that in any way. It can. You know, I told you the ridiculous conversation I had with a guy where he said, oh, well, I'm of the alternative school of non-duality. That's ridiculous. How can you have an alternative non-duality? The very words are ridiculous. It's a contradiction in terms. Non-duality means oneness. There can't be an alternative version of oneness.
No.
One is one. So then, it's not really an alternative school of non-duality. It's just duality, which is what I pointed out to him, and he wasn't very charmed with that, because he wanted to keep in his illusion. I'm like, well, then it's not really an alternative school of non-duality. It's duality. So
it's a bit like that.
Non-duality.
It's a bit like that message I sent you with the man, the rock solid ego. We need that rock solid. It's the same, isn't it? It just brings confusion.
Confusion. You're trying to make both ego and spirit real, and you'll never succeed. But it takes some discernment to see through that ego device. And that's why in the Course he's very explicit. Over and over and over, he tells us the same message. I mean, how many times has he repeated this message? Hundreds of times in the
yeah.
over and over. in different ways, in different language, because he knows that the ego is going to try and squirm and worm its way out of that and try and get us to keep believing in duality. So he has to be very explicit and say, no, it's just this. This is it, and I'm going to repeat it again and again until you get it. Because this is the only way out.
Which makes sense, really, because if you're in that split mind, you're just on this mad roller coaster. I know some people would say, well, you know, you can control, you know, you just accept the good with the bad, you know, that kind of stuff.
But there's no way out there. Okay, so then you live in a reality, good and bad, light and dark, you know, life and death. These seem to be real, and you accept that then this world is reality, and you're just going to keep coming back here over and over again to live a human life. If you believe in reincarnation, then you're going to, okay, well, I'll just keep reincarnating, and I'll keep coming back here. For what point? For what, you know, what's the point, really, of that? And there's a kind of a recognition that, well, what is the point of all this drama? Is there really a point?
No, just a hamster wheel. And as you get older, you just get tired of it.
Over and over and over again. Forever. You know, the time just goes on forever, and you're just going to be multiple different incarnations over and over and over again to never ending. Oh, it's disaster. I think of that, I go, oh, how tiring.
But yeah, it just seems a bit daft.
That's the ego's alternative, you know, to the non-dual reality, saying, well, you just keep doing this. And then the spirit says, reminds you, well, what's the point of that?
True. Just doing the same old stuff.
Yeah, you know, whatever time and place you come into, whatever different circumstances, different bodies you choose, it's the same. The human condition is the same over and over. You just repeat the same thing, just variations on the same themes. And we've all done that many times. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't be studying this teaching. And there's a part of us that gets weary of it and goes, no, I'm just tired. I'm so tired of illusions. I just want the truth.
Yeah, true. Yes. That's
So on that note, should we call it there? Like,
yes, let's, because
so I've got meditations I've sent already. I think I've got another one recorded from last year. So I'll
listen to it later. Yeah.
Right.
That's great. Okay.
So
thank you very much.
Thanks for joining. Nice, short, sharp, sweet session. Tomorrow I've got a session with John, one-on-one. So I suggest we do
Wednesday. Yeah, that's good. Perfect.
Wednesday afternoon. Is that good for you?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. See you then.
Okay. See you then. Namaste.
All right.
Bye.
Namaste. Bye, Lane.
Bye.
Okay, so that's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining, Elaine, making the session possible. If you watch this on YouTube, you're watching the recording, then why not join us in these sessions? You can go to lifebuild.com to find out how you do that. You can sign up while you're there to receive a daily inspirational quote, so what I shared up front in the beginning of this meeting, and some of the related material, my own interpretation of that, along with the daily lesson from the course, and a short breath break or mini meditation that helps you practice that lesson. So head over to lifebuild.com, sign up. You'll need Telegram downloaded and installed on your phone or device to get the material, but I send that out free. And you'll also be able to join these live sessions from I send out notifications on Telegram about these live every day. So hope to catch you on the inside. Oh, and by the way, so why not subscribe if you haven't already to the channel, so you'll be notified whenever I go live, which is typically 6 days a week. So you can then be notified by YouTube whenever I go live and watch the live stream or the recording. So take another step in the direction of awakening. Right now, hit the subscribe button, head over to lifebuild.com, and hope to see you soon. Hope to meet you on the inside soon. Namaste, which means the true non-dual self in me acknowledges and honors that same true non-dual Christ self in you. Wishing you much love, peace, and joy in itself. Bye for now.